About a minute until the top of the hour. We've got folks joining the room. Typically, we have folks join a couple minutes before and up to a minute or two after we get started. We're about a minute till the top of the hour. I'm going to give everyone another minute or so to get into the room. We are recording today's webinar, so we'll get started here very soon. But again, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us for what I know is going to be a great webinar today, as we hear from amazing folks there in Bowling Green talking about some of their recent brownfield work. It is 12 p.m., but like I said, I want to give folks just one more minute before we get started. And again, I just want to thank everybody that has joined us so far, and we'll keep the room open and allow other folks to join us as we get started here. But in terms of introductions, we can go ahead and get rolling with that. So welcome everyone that has joined us today for April's webinar. If you haven't joined us, I am so glad that you found today's webinar. This webinar provided by Blueprint Kentucky, formerly CETIC at the University of Kentucky, in partnership with the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet's Brownfield office, are really proud to present today's webinar. Our partnership at Blueprint Kentucky and the Brownfield office with the state of Kentucky has been ongoing for about the last 2 years now. And our partnership has allowed us to really focus more heavily on education and outreach and reaching more communities in an effort to get folks including yourselves, more competitive, to take advantage of emerging brownfield grant opportunities and other technical assistance opportunities provided by Blueprint Kentucky and the Kentucky Brownfield office. Today, we are really excited to host our friends in Bowling Green. About a month or two ago, Kirsten O'Leary and myself got a chance to sort of hear this story from Nick and Brent, and we're really blown away by not just the images that you all are going to see, but really by the story and perseverance that they shared with us. I think it beautifully illustrates how many of these projects unfold and the pivots that have to be made to get to the end of our vision, and also how sometimes those visions emerge and evolve. So today, our webinar titled "From Contamination to Recreation" really is our opportunity to uplift and allow Nick and Brent, who I'll introduce just briefly, to share their story. So you're going to learn a lot about how they have leveraged both EPA brownfield funds and contaminated sites in a way to link those sites with future opportunities, creating what I know are going to be world-class assets, not just for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but for Bowling Green, Kentucky. So I want to take just a moment to introduce Nick and Brent, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. And they will sort of launch into the webinar. So today we have Nick Cook, excuse me, who's the grant manager for the city of Bowling Green, and we have Brent Childers, who is the director of neighborhood and community services with the city of Bowling Green, and they're going to share this amazing story, not just with us but with everyone. One little bit of housekeeping here. Throughout today's presentation, you are invited to use the Q&A function that you can find on your end in the Zoom screen. You'll see that Q&A. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add those. And at the end of today's webinar, we will circle back to those and get through as many as we can. The other thing I want to share is that we do record these webinars, and everyone that has registered, whether you are in attendance or just simply registered, will receive that link as soon as we get this uploaded. In addition to a link to our webpage at Blueprint Kentucky that houses our entire webinar, our Brownfield webinar collection, which is growing steadily month to month as we hold these. So if you are interested in additional resources related to Brownfield redevelopment or downtown revitalization, both here in the state of Kentucky or perhaps maybe beyond, please feel free to reach out. and let us know, and let's figure out how we can best support your efforts in this work. I'll also be sending out links to access our other webinars. But again, I just want to say thank you to everyone that is in attendance today. And in particular, I want to extend a huge thank you to Nick and to Brent for being willing to share this story with all of us today. Folks, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. And again, encourage you all to use that Q&A function throughout today, and we will circle back to questions at the end of today's webinar. Nick and Brent, take it from here, fellas.
All right. Thank you, Shane. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Good afternoon to our friends on the eastern portion of Kentucky, and good morning to our friends in the western portion of Kentucky, or those of us on slow time, like we are here in Bowling Green. As Shane said, I'm Brent. I'm the Director of Neighborhood and Community Services, and with me today is Nick Cook, our grants manager, and we have been working on this project for a number of years. And today is really about telling that story, kind of where we started, where we came from, and where we're going. And so we want to make this informational. So by all means, please ask questions, engage with us. We'll answer everything that we can. At the end, we want to share the story. We want to share that this is not an easy process. The picture you see before you took a lot of years to get to. It's going to take a lot of years to get to reality of that. And so that's what we're trying to showcase to people is this, that none of this is easy work, but it is all accomplishable if you're willing to continue and persevere and stay true to it. So this all started really years ago with a desire to activate our lower downtown. So the riverfront, which we'll get to in a minute, is kind of the anchor of the northern portion of downtown. Downtown runs up to the river. Once you cross the river and you're at the riverfront park area, you're on that northern portion of town, and we just weren't seeing activity and investment. And one of the opportunities we saw in that lower downtown area was some blighted properties. So we put together an application, what, Nick, 2015, 2016?
Yep, that sounds about right.
To do some brownfields to try to spur development, and we got denied. We got told no, that we weren't funded. So we circled back, changed tactics a little bit, came up with a little bit different strategy. Came back in 2017 and got a grant, got an assessment grant, $300,000, and we're gonna change the world, right? We're gonna do all these amazing things. I can't say it was that easy. Can you?
No, I have to say it started off a little slow for us.
Yeah. I also want to say we had a great partner in InSafe. So InSafe came alongside of us and went through. One of the challenges that we found is at this point the city wasn't in the game of buying and rehabbing properties. So we did not have a whole inventory of properties ready to go, or properties that we were looking to acquire for redevelopment. So we made this much more of a community-based brownfield program, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we had a redevelopment strategy for a 6 census tract area that we wanted to see redeveloped over time through our neighborhood improvements program, which is funded in part by our community development block grant that the city gets each year. So the city had an inventory of known brownfield properties,
Right.
but the city did not have any local commitments to turn those properties prior to the application for the brownfield assessment grant.
So we had to convince property owners that we were here to assist and here to help, and we were able to do that. So we ended up with 11 phase ones that we'll go through a couple of, and 3 phase 2 environmental site assessments, and then also we did a quarter development strategy assessment that we'll talk about a little bit more to kind of give you a kind of how these two tie together. So with that, we'll kind of talk about a couple of the sites. So here's a couple of the sites. The building on the left, Honeycrust Bakery. This is after it has been some extensive work done to it. Whenever we were looking at it, it didn't say Honeycrust Bakery in those big fancy letters or have those big beautiful windows. It was more boarded up, kind of overlooked, but this was an old bakery that served. This sits right next to WKU's campus, right next to the rail line, and really just been used as a storage good size, older mid-century factory. Had some really cool features to it, but had a new owner that came in, had a vision for it. And this was one of our first ones. And it led to then now another owner has taken it and put some money into it and is trying to turn it into office space for his business and storage. And so that's kind of the vision for the life of this property. The one on the right, we didn't do one on Grease Monkey. That's the celebration of the new business. It was an old filling station, really the old school filling station that you think of, owner operator, had a couple of bays, but also did gas, oil changes, a little bit of everything. Your traditional looking corner filling station, but he wanted to retire and repurpose it, and so we helped go through that process. And lo and behold, somebody comes along and buys it to turn it into a quick lube change place, Grease Monkey, local national name out there. So these were our kind of kick-starting as we're going, but also we'll draw attention to a couple. This is in the lower downtown. So the picture on your left, the Bohannon Tobacco Company, being part of West Kentucky, there's always a tobacco influence as in this part of the world. And so this was one of our downtown old tobacco warehouses. And it has really just been used for storage for as long as I can remember. I don't remember tobacco sales being in there at any time. But this is the picture on the left sits directly across the street from the bridge that you see on the right. So these are literally 200 feet from each other. This pedestrian bridge connects over to Riverfront Park. So I'll show it later whenever we get to a little map, and then you can kind of see the relationship a little bit better. So Riverfront Park would be in the background of the picture on the right, and then the tobacco warehouse would just be just across the street. So we did a phase one on both of these properties.
That's correct.
And the bridge, we leveraged that into going after some TAP grant funds, transportation alternative programs at KYTC, and ended up with a $2 million renovation of the bridge. So we had to do some foundation repairs. Since we had the phase one, then we were able to remediate and blast all the way down to bare steel and then repaint the bridge. So that's what that project was. The project on the left has since, the property on the left, the Bohannon project, has since been acquired by an investor. And so looking to redevelop that. So here's once again, where we did work maybe 6-8 years ago, now we're starting to see that return back to the community in some of his vision. So I'm going to jump over to now the corridor study. I hope somebody can see my cursor here. So this is where that pedestrian bridge is, where it crosses the river. This open land that you see here is the riverfront park that we'll focus in on in a minute. So that tobacco warehouse that I showed you was right here, literally across the street. And so when I talked about trying to leverage future development in this lower downtown, if you look onto the far left of this map, you'll see a baseball field, some other buildings, but what you're seeing is that's the home of our single A baseball team, the Bowling Green Hot Rods. Above that red line to the left, we've seen about $150 million worth of investment. And so you're seeing a lot of things happen. Below that red line, towards the river to the right side, we weren't seeing any activity. And all the way up where in this area on the far end, everywhere inside of this red line, we weren't seeing activity, but we were seeing a lot of older industrial potential brownfield sites that we felt like were ripe for redevelopment. And we were trying to see how can we spur redevelopment in this area. We partnered with City Visions out of Louisville to come in and really do an assessment, kind of a corridor assessment of this entire area.
And this was part of our Brownfield assessment grant. And one of the things I want to point out here, one of the reasons why we picked City Visions to do a corridor study was we were having trouble spending down our Brownfields grant, and we were actually a little concerned that we were going to have to give back some funds. So we were able to actually leverage the grant to hire city visions to come in and help us strategize a little bit more in detail of available brownfield properties within our designated redevelopment area.
Yeah. And so, that's why we want to be open and honest about this stuff didn't just happen and everything sequenced perfectly. A lot of these things were one step at a time, one challenge at a time, overcoming the next obstacle. And that's what we were trying to do as we went through this process. And so really now we kind of focus in on Riverfront Park a little bit more. And what City Visions really kind of gave us the insight on was instead of trying to push everything from downtown to the river, start at the river and it will push back. And that's kind of what we're doing. That's what it is. So this is Riverfront Park. This is about 70 acres of land that the city has owned for somewhere around 20 years. And in that 20 years, we've been able to put in some walking paths. That's our claim to fame on this one. So we're not proud of kind of the level of investment that we've made. There is an existing mountain bike course that was put in by a community group of mountain bike riders in this area. It's on the Riverfront Park East side of everything. Riverfront Park West that you see labeled there is actually a closed landfill. That's a construction debris landfill that was closed sometime in the mid 80s. Riverfront Park East is mostly floodplain, so we know we were dealing with two big constraints. Floodplain on the east side and the landfill on the west side that we had to design around and work with as part of this. But we had a vision, and we didn't create this vision. I will tell you, there was a vision in probably around 2000 of turning this into some type of major park, really themed around outdoor and adventure. So we took that idea, put some legs to it, and wanted to make it a reality with the hope of if we were to make a really cool, unique park here, this would spur development in this area, and we could see a return back to the community. And so we went out and got a master plan written. I will tell you, this one is from 2016, and I had not looked at this master plan in a long time till the other day, and we were preparing, and I forgot how it was that we started with this vision. And so we wanted to go out and we applied for an outdoor recreation legacy partnership grant. We were awarded this one. We applied in the first time in 2016 and were denied. They said, no, you weren't competitive enough. This is a pretty competitive application process. It is only available to urban areas, but it's competitive across the entire U.S. So most of the time, whenever you see these, they're much bigger cities than Bowling Green. And so we came back as part of the 2018 cycle and said, okay, how do we make ourselves more competitive? How do we not stop at that first no? What do we need to do? So the grant at that time was a maximum award of $750,000, and you had to put up, it was a 1-to-1 match, so you had to put up $750,000. So we went to the city commission and said, hey, to be more competitive, we need to put up $1.5 million. We need to have a 2-to-1 match to get this, because really we had a vision for Riverfront Park, but we didn't have the ability to do anything because we had zero money. We started with absolutely $0. We had to pay for this rendering. This was hand drawn by a landscape architect out of state. I think we paid about $10,000 for this years before. So that was about the only level of investment we were given as part of this project. And we convinced the city commission to double match. The other thing that had happened is we found out that there was a property owner along the River Street corridor that had been buying property and wanted to redevelop. So we got a letter from them to show that public-private partnership, and we were awarded $750,000 as long as we put up the $1.5 million. And we thought at that time we could build everything here for $2.25 million. And of course, that ain't the case anymore, because in I think we got, when did we finally get award on this? 2020?
Yes.
We still haven't spent the money, 2020, but this year is the year. We're gonna go to bid this summer, so that's the plan. But in 2020, we thought we could still do all this. So once we had this award, we had the money. Now we start to get some momentum. Now we start to get some support. Now people are starting to come alongside. And so we went and hired a landscape architecture firm to really go through the process of developing what I would say is a more detailed master plan. So this is what we started with. And then we hired MKSK. We're working with the Louisville office. They're based out of Columbus, and that's who we brought in to be our landscape architect. And we engaged with them to do a full citizen engagement master plan action with them. And so this is just one of the shots from our master plan. We ended up with surveys. We talked to thousands of people. We worked at community events doing dot exercises, really just talking to people. What do you want to see in this park? What are the things that are really just what are the big important things that you want as part of this park? What are the activities? What are the activations? What do you think would make this truly a destination? And that was always kind of our vision of how do we make this a destination? So this is a sampling of what people told us, what they said were the important things to them, where they wanted us to really focus and spend our money. And so we use this as a guiding force on how do we develop the broader master plan. And so the master plan process for this took a year. So we went ahead and spent the time going through that process of really engaging with the community, having those conversations, and really kind of working through that process to see what is it that the community wants as part of that.
And we really, as part of that community engagement process, we really did, three things. I felt like we had a big dashboard set up online where the public could review all the different opportunities. They were able to complete a survey. So I think we had almost 1,000 responses, maybe over 1,000 responses. And then we set up at Duncan Hines Days as a local festival. We have something called Eats and Beats, which is a free concert. So we had set up these easels and had a dotmocracy, to steal the word from Andy Knight, our landscape architect, where the public was able to put these stickers to kind of show the things they liked and didn't like. And then we have a Stand for Children event every year where kids were able to actually chime in and provide their input on what they wanted to see at this park. So it was through all this different levels of public input that we were able to create our master plan and program the space of this 70 acres that we're going to further discuss with you here shortly.
So you can start to see some of these pieces of the kayaking and nature play. So you see some of these themes emerging. There's one other part I wanted to tell you on the grants. So we call it all Riverfront Park. This land has no official name. As part of the grant application, we knew we needed a way to describe. We didn't want to say old landfill. We didn't want to say floodplain. So we needed to describe those areas. So we came up with Riverfront Park West and Riverfront Park East. And so we just came up with Riverfront Park. Nick and I made it up to put it in the grant application because we didn't have a better name at that time. And people have tried to give us names, and we still haven't found one any better. So there is no official name for this park. The city has not deemed it. This is the name of this park, but we needed it for the grant application, so we came up with it. So we're not afraid to be a little resourceful whenever it comes down to it. But so far it's stuck, and I don't expect it to change at this point. So I think it is what it is at this point. But as we finish the master planning process, this is the result of that master planning process. So this is still the same area that I showed you a while ago with that rough map, but now it's how do we create this really engaging, playful recreation, adventure, outdoor tourism escape literally 6 blocks from downtown Bowling Green. And so now this is starting to, at this point in the process, now we're a couple years ago and the momentum is really moving forward. We've got a lot of support. We've got a lot of motivation behind us. A lot of people are engaged in what we're doing. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through what pieces of this are. So one, you'll see over there to the left is a new boat ramp. The bridge is in between that 1 and 2. That's in that area. So number 2 is really getting people down to the river's edge. So in here they call it the landing, but getting people down. There's not a safe, accessible route down to the water now. Right now, the Barron River is an unsafe area. This is not a community that is invested in making the river part of life here for a long time, and so this is now kind of making that connection. So you see 3 as in this master plan kind of has that vision of this plaza area at the edge of before you get down to the river. 4 you see as a really a play area, and a lot of these are placeholders, and you can kind of see some of that imagery. So 4 in that imagery that's kind of pulled out of there is really about how do we create play with the sense of caves and karst. Since Bowling Green sits in the center of this karst environment, surrounded by caves everywhere, how do we make that part of play? So how do we engage children in this opportunity to play with these themes of nature? 5, what they're calling arcade here is really how do we, during programming and during special events, how do we create the opportunity for food trucks and different types of activities to take place? 6, upper green area is really about performances. So outdoor performances, maybe it's festivals, maybe it's music, that we host the community hosts several different types of outdoor entertainment. So this can be a place for that. Education. Yeah. I mean, now we're trying to figure out how do we incorporate nature education, streamside education, nature education, because we recognize a lot of the kids now don't get the same opportunity to grow up in nature like maybe we did whenever we were kids. I can remember being a kid in Warren County and the sinkholes were a fort and that's where we played at. And so that was just part of life. But kids don't get that same opportunity anymore. So how do we create education as part of this park? Kind of working through, of course, parking areas. So you see an 8, that's for bouldering. So think of climbing. Don't think of rappels, harnesses, things like that, but really think of how do we introduce recreational climbing and just get people activated into that climbing, leaning into that outdoor adventure brands that are out there.
For all ages.
For all ages, absolutely, for all ages. And then if they want to advance to higher levels, then there's opportunities in Kentucky for them to go explore that. We're not trying to recreate 400-foot rock faces here or anything like that. People want to have their dogs. 10 is probably my favorite. 10 is a canopy walk. So a vision of being able to walk through the trees on these elevated platforms and getting people up into the trees to walk around. These are done in some other areas. So how do we kind of create those opportunities here? The lower bowl there at 12 is another large event space. To give you a sense of scale, where 12 is, and you see that lower bowl, that's about the size of a regulation soccer field. So we're talking about a lot of space in this area. People, until you've been in this park, this lower riverfront park east side is about 56 acres. So it is a big, expansive area. So moving around, some more nature play, some more meadows, some more gardens, and this is all at this point still master planning. 16 moving into a pump track. So I'll tell you, you can kind of see a faint line in the background. That's the existing mountain bike trail that's out there. 16 being a pump track would be a looped type of either dirt or wood surface. So 17 and 21 are really tied together. So this vision of paddle in the river and doing kayaking with drops and access, whether passive or active kayaking. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. 19, you see as a mound. And so there's an image up at the top of the slides integrated into the mound, trying to just change the elevation. So we're envisioning somewhere around an accessible path that leads up to a point that is about 30 feet above grade, and then incorporating that into play with some slides or some other features, but just to give a different view. And so we're trying to figure out what is that height, because we want to be able to look back across the river, back across the pedestrian bridge, and really change the view of what it is to be here. So on River Street, the road that separates Riverfront Park East and Riverfront Park West, there's about 11,000 vehicles a day that drive on that road. And so everything on the Riverfront Park West side is very open. There's no trees there now. So you can see everything. It's very visible. On the east side, where the bigger property is not. It's very screened off. It's very quiet. It's very reclusive. It creates the opportunity to kind of be this urban oasis of nature, really just 6 blocks away from town. I'll give you another view of it.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add, so this initial cost estimate when we had this master plan developed was roughly $50 million, with our only really committed funds in the beginning was the 1.5 that the city had put up to match the ORLP grant, which was 750,000. So of that 50 million, we had roughly 2.2 million initially set aside, and the city has been trying to slowly put some budgeted funds aside for this project, and then we've been looking for other grants as well, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail later.
So this is another view, kind of a nighttime, different angle of those. So you'll see River Street there. You'll see the upper green where that performance area is. The play gallery is kind of built on that theme of karst and caves. The pavilion all the way down to Whitewater Park, and then you'll see in kind of the bottom left that little purpley lit up area. That's the pedestrian bridge. With this vision of how do we make that artistic and fun and vibrant. So there's kind of a project working out there now. I was trying to get some legs of lighting that and painting that. So no updates at this point. But you see the white water in the river, the woods canopy wall, climbing wall, lower bowl, kind of the adventure bike track. So you start to see a different layout of how all this fits together in this big vision. But as Nick talked about, we didn't have $50 million. We still don't have $50 million. But how do we, now that we have this vision and this path, start knocking off some of this to really move things forward?
And one of the things I also want to mention, because we're getting ready to start talking about the Whitewater Park. When we initially did our master plan, a Whitewater Park was something we wanted to have, but it was to be something nice, but something we didn't think would ever happen until probably the latter part of the completion of the master plan. But it's funny how new grant opportunities seem to change things, which we're going to get into here next.
So if you go back, to what I was talking about, that Whitewater Park was like number 21 on that list, right? But then we saw an opportunity arise, and the ORLP program opened back up. And this is where we have the existing first phase grant. And they opened up again, but you could only do it in designated census tracts. And that census tract boundary is in the middle of the river. And since the river was the barrier, activities in the river would be eligible. So anything on the land past the river was in census tract 113, which wasn't eligible.
Which is basically the entire park.
Yeah, which is the entire park. Everything in the river and back towards town is in census tract 102, which is eligible. It's an opportunity zone. It meets all the designations out there. So we said, well, let's give it a go and try it. So we had this conceptual plan drawn up. We paid a whitewater design firm to draw this up. They had worked with the community 25 years ago whenever these ideas kind of first started. And we applied for about $7.2 million.
That's right.
It's a 50-50 or a 1-to-1 match. So the city said that it would put up. We applied for an actual $3.64 million, and then we put up the rest. And then the state legislature created the grant program, for state matching funds for federal projects. So we applied to that. And since Warren County is I don't know how they call it classification, but we have to put up 5%. And then so we ended up getting awarded, which was an absolute shock to me. I'm going to be very honest. I really was shocked that we got this awarded. But we're going to end up now we have $3.6 million of federal award, $3.45 million of state award, and the city has put up $189,000 as part of the match for this. And we are going to build a whitewater park in the Barren River in downtown Bowling Green. Part of our research and kind of doing the feasibility study and this concept, what we've found is this is a good opportunity. This river works well. It has all the supporting infrastructure. You know, you can't do this type of work in a in the Ohio River or big river. So Barren River was small enough. This one worked really well, and plus it has all the support of being in a community around. So this is an example of just taking advantage of opportunities and kind of just keep moving and leveraging, telling these stories and kind of keep moving forward. Where we ended up with this, and the city's putting up about 5%, and 95% of this is paid for out of grant funds from different sources.
And the big thing about this project as well is it's as much of a public safety project
Absolutely.
as it is a recreation project. So currently, there is a low head rubble dam, which is responsible for numerous drownings every year. And not only we're going to be able to make this river something that you can enjoy the recreation, but you're also going to be able to safely access it as well. So we have a picture we're getting ready to show you of exactly what this is going to look like.
Yeah, Nick brings up a good point. This project has in this year since it got awarded got a lot of scrutiny because we had 2 people drowned in the river this summer. You heard me say it earlier, the river's not safe. Don't be a part of the river. And people try to swim in there. And that low head dam that's there at about where drop 2 is right now, creates just the hydrology, creates an unsafe river. And so then all of a sudden here we are trying to bring more people to the river, put more people in the river. And there was a public pushback of what does this mean? We've already lost 2 lives. Why would we ever put more people in the river? And we're had to have a big public education push of what this means. What does this project do? And so whenever we talk about these drops or drop structures or a whitewater park, I don't want people to think that we're talking about the Ocoee River on a 2-hour float with a guide and a raft. That's not what we're talking about. This is an example of a drop structure. And so what the engineers are designing is these rocks are placed in there, actually mortared all the way to the bedrock, and then they bring up to a certain elevation, and in the center portion is where you have what's called the flow through that's the drop, so that you're moving the elevation of the river from one pool to the next, let's say a couple of feet at a time, and then it creates that whitewater that the kayakers love to play in. What that also does is it creates these eddies and pools off to the side. So in this picture, and I can't tell you where this picture is from, but this is a park that our consultants designed previously. You see people just hanging out on the sides, down by the river. You see people down in the park in the background. So even though there's only a few people actively using the whitewater park, there's a lot more people that can actively use the river, and it creates this safe river environment. Now, as the river levels increase, then that drop becomes a little wider and a little bit more aggressive. So this would be at a lower level, obviously, probably sometime summerish. And so people can engage and be out there. But then as that water comes up, it widens the drop. So it goes out, what those are called wing walls, that will create access points for people to go out and fish and hang out. But then as the water comes up and the white water drops a little bit more and becomes a little bit more turbulent, then your more advanced paddlers want to have that and leave your recreational paddlers maybe not ready to assume that. So your more advanced paddlers want really aggressive water, but they're trained for it, they're suited up for it, they're prepared for it. And so there's opportunities for them to engage in this. And what we're going to do is we're going to build this in downtown Bowling Green, pretty much. I mean, that's really the reality of it.
So it really becomes an economic development and tourism project as much as it is a local recreation project.
Absolutely. And so to kind of drive that home as part of our feasibility, we had them look at where are the closest whitewater parks to Bowling Green. And the two closest are the Ocoee Whitewater Center, which is like built during the '96 Olympics when Atlanta hosted the Olympics. And that is like the U.S. Olympic Whitewater Center, not your normal recreational center. And then the Riverscape River Run in Dayton, Ohio, 5 hours away. And so we started looking at to craft the narrative. So what we call the art of articulation. How do we craft this narrative to why this project needs to be in Bowling Green? Those boundaries that you see from Bowling Green are driving distance. And so we started looking at what is the population of people that live within a 3 hour driving distance of Bowling Green. And we found out that it is 9 million people. 9 million people live within inside a 3 hour driving distance of Bowling Green. And the closest whitewater parks are 4.5 to 5 hours away. Now, we understand that not all 9 million people are going to be a part of that, but we also understand that that's a large population of people that want to engage in this type of activity, especially at a recreational level, that's not near as much of an advanced level.
Yeah, and it also just shows geographically there's a substantial gap in opportunities in the southeastern part of the United States to engage in whitewater or paddling activities. We feel like this is a niche that we can fill with this project.
And so with the opportunities for more advanced whitewater in East Tennessee, Western North Carolina, or more advanced climbing in that area, or in Red River Gorge, like we can catch people in transition or want to be a part of this. So this is, as Nick said, really growing into be a much more of a destination park of really being a draw. So now we have to build up to that and trying to create the other supporting amenities to where this all comes together. And so that's the whitewater, we believe, is going to be the driver for a lot of traffic. Because not just because of the people who are going to paddle, but the people who are going to come be a part of that or want to see that or engage with the river, or just it's a sunny Saturday afternoon in July and want to go down to the river to enjoy that time. So how do we create other amenities and other things for people to do while they're there? So now as we're moving into nearing to bidding and design for the different phases and starting to make this park a reality, we have some other imagery to kind of bring from the master plan forward. And so this is phase one, rendering for Riverfront Park. You can see in this area, this is that kind of play galleries, plaza area that I talked about. So this has the seating and the benches and a small performance area lawn, but also the boat ramp comes in here. You have some swings and some there's a rock meadow and a little trail and some nature play, some much more passive areas. But this is what that initial ORLP grant, the one that we got funded, the first one, is going to pay for as part of this. Phase 3 that you see in the kind of lower right, that's the whitewater. So phase 3 is going to come in whitewater, and we had to push phase 1 back off the river's edge. You can kind of see all the grass out front because we're going to have to reshape the whole front of that river access to build the landings, to build all the space to get people down to the river. And then we need to do that in conjunction with the whitewater park.
Yeah,
So
one of the things we had to do once we got that second ORLP award to build a whitewater park is we had to pivot our phase one design was not initially this,
No,
but it had to substantially change just because the two projects adjoin each other and then impact each other. So we had to have part of phase one on hold until we can engage with phase two at a later point.
phase three.
Phase three, I apologize. At a
Yeah,
later point.
so phase three is gonna be whitewater and riverfront access. Phase one is what you see here, in this rendering about building in some parking, building in the boat ramp, building in this kind of plaza, what we call the front porch to the river. Because once phase three is done in several years, where you see those benches lined up will be the front of the river. And so we're gonna reshape all of that area. That's the initial plans here.
But one of the other important aspects of phase one is the boat ramp. So that's been a big part of our grant application beginning, because currently we have a makeshift boat ramp that actually faces upstream instead of downstream, which makes it very challenging for our first responders to perform rescues in the river. So this is going to be a very key part of kicking off the improvements to public safety in the river.
So you see phase two coming soon in the background. Y'all get the opportunity to see, this has not been released publicly anywhere else, but this is some of our initial schematic design for phase two of what that play looks like. So phase two, this is now overhead. You see phase one to the left. So phase two starts to incorporate this sense of play. So you see the mound kind of coming up, that kind of arched area, getting that elevation up. But you see in also building in the slides, building in access to an elevated platform, getting some type of structure in there that can have elements of play and slides as part of that, but then creating these little nodes of play in this entire area based on climbing and nature and water features and slides and just all these different little pieces of play. This area of play is about 1 acre. So we're going to have about a 1 acre play area. So instead of just dropping in a what I call out of the catalog playground that you just put in, this will be kind of these areas spread out of play and adventure and kind of discovery as you go through. And so that's what this is really themed and built around. Also, we have a water feature built on that kind of karst thought, and then still incorporating that food truck kind of food court there at think of 9 as that's what those little gray boxes are, and kind of creating that little area and introducing some public restrooms here. So this is kind of the sneak peek of what phase two is meant to look like. This will be hopeful. We're looking at going to bid in probably winter of this year to start construction next spring on this. So this phase is being funded completely by the city, so there's no grant dollars as part of this. And that's kind of where we're at on phase two.
And then with the Whitewater Park, we're currently under the initial schematic design. We still have to go through permitting with the Corps of Engineers, so we're still looking at about 2 to 3 years out for that project.
We're hopeful we can start construction in 2028. The permitting for building a whitewater park in a river is quite exhaustive, so that's going to be a lot. I want to kind of, as we wrap up, as we're running close on our time, there's a couple of things that we learned. You're going to make mistakes along the way. We did, but we just kind of keep moving forward. We don't let them hold us up. There were things that we did that we'd look back and said, "Oh, that probably wasn't the right thing," but we kind of kept moving forward one step at a time as we went through that. You heard me say it a couple of times that don't stop at a no. This all started with the brownfields and just trying to spur development, and we were denied. Then we had the idea to do the park. We were denied. So there's a lot of opportunities where we were told, no, you can't do that, but we got to figure, okay, then how do we make that a reality? How can we still overcome this? And so we found a way around it. We built another tool. We built another asset. We got something in our the 9 million and the 3 hour drive. We felt like that was another thing that was another no that we had to overcome. We need to tell why in Bowling Green, why here. And because there was another kind of obstacle in the way. One thing I will say, I think Nick and I really excel at, and we do this is one project, we do this for other things, is leverage. And really, you can leverage anything. We got a couple of icons here for opportunity zones. So that Census Tract 102 that I talked about there in that lower downtown, that's an opportunity zone, but it's also part of a HUD NRSA as part of our CDBG program. Now, I can't tell you we've had any opportunity zones investments, and I can't say that the NRSA has paid huge dividends for us, but every grant application that we do down there, we talk about those two things. We're leveraging that designation as a better argument for why somebody else needs to invest in this area, why somebody else needs to invest in this project.
So a lot of communities, when they create a plan, they put it on a shelf and it collects dust. In Bowling Green, for the longest time, I would think it's no different.
Yeah, that's very true.
But one of the things we've done is I think we've tried to use these plans, any plans that we know of are available, whether we create them or not, we try to leverage that data, that public input, that strategy in any grant application that we apply for. And I think it's really helping us be more successful.
Absolutely. We were able to get 2 ORLP grants and haven't spent the first dollar on the first one yet. That to me is still baffling that they gave us a yes on the second one. I ain't upset about it. We're gonna make it work and we're gonna get through it. The other part of this key takeaway for us is the perseverance is key. We started this really in 2015, 2016, and we're in 2025 and we haven't built anything yet. But we have been building and working and building momentum to the point now we've raised about 16 to 17 million dollars in a combination of funding with more to come. We're making asks for larger amounts. We're preparing for future phases. We started with really just a small dream of how do we accomplish this, and now it's leading to these other things. But that only happens because we were willing to kind of keep plugging away and keep working at it. And so that's really, I think, one of it is you got to be willing. These things just take a lot of time.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to say is you're not alone. You don't have to do it alone. We've had some great partners along the way because we're not brownfields experts. We're not park experts. We're not whitewater experts. So, we've mentioned, InSafe. We've mentioned MKSK and, City Vision. There's a lot of different folks out there with a lot of expertise that you can really bring onto your team and continue to leverage their knowledge and their abilities. So
That's right. The team is important. It's very important. So Shane, that leaves us a little bit of time for questions. I wanted to put our contact information here. So if anybody has anything that they think of later, feel free to reach out to us. We're all in this game together. We want Kentucky to succeed. So we'd be glad to be a resource, talk through something, kind of help somebody through if there's something that comes up later. But we're here for questions now.
Awesome. Well, first, I just want to say thank you both. And thanks to the city of Bowling Green for being willing to share this really inspirational story. And I know this is a huge project, and it may be so intimidating for others when they're comparing maybe their smaller town, knowing sort of the size, scale, and scope of Bowling Green. But I think the stories embedded are of particular value. And as I was sort of hearing you all talk, there are a couple of things that really stuck out to me. We do have a couple questions that I'm going to get to in just a moment, but I wanted just to share a couple thoughts here and affirmations and to uplift some of the things that you all said because I find them incredibly important to these broad development conversations. I think the first is just to acknowledge that there is a long road to revitalization. And we're talking about a process that started a decade ago and is probably going to run for another decade until that final ribbon is probably tied after all the construction. And it is perseverance and it takes a certain commitment to that vision and that goal. But also the idea that you all have leveraged amazing resources, amazing investments that you found the way to yes when people were saying no. And we always say in our brownfield work that there are a number of ways to get to yes. And sometimes we have to be really creative in how we get there. I also just want to note that while we are in a brownfield redevelopment webinar, the brownfield piece was simply a catalyst to get some of these conversations started. And
Absolutely.
that these brownfield projects can do the same in your communities as well. That when we plan and we plan effectively, we create stories, we create a way to tell that story, and we get other folks excited about those opportunities, because let's be honest, it is hard to imagine the vision that you all have articulated on a landfill site, right?
Mhm.
And in a site with a hydraulic that is so dangerous to folks in the river. I also want to commend you all for focusing on play. It's one of the things that I believe personally is absent in many of our lives. That idea of play and wonder. We lose it when we get older, and the fact that you all are creating a place for folks there in Bowling Green to rediscover play, either as an adult, as a family, or as a place for those children to experience the wonders of the environment. I commend you all for that. I also want to uplift the grant program, the GRANT program. We do have some folks from out of state on this webinar today. And we are blessed here in Kentucky that our legislatures created a fund to provide cost share for some of these huge grants where the cost share is unattainable for those local communities. And lastly, I just want to, for our folks here in the Commonwealth, we probably all remember Kentucky's sort of catchphrase of our unbridled spirit. And while we may not use that much these days, I think this project really embodies that spirit. That you all are unbridled in the sense that you've not let one single track limit your vision, and you've kind of taken the reins literally and figuratively to make this thing a reality in your community. And I love the way that you're using story and images and renderings to build momentum, because this, like you said, is a $50 million project, and you all have been able to leverage some amazing resources. With that said, I want to circle back to a couple questions and comments that were shared, and if there are others, please feel free to add those. Our first question is from Brian Stores, and it's great to have you on the webinar today, Brian. I'm glad you could join us. And he's asking if it would be possible to get a copy of his master plan, or your all's master plan, because they are working currently in a disadvantaged community in Eastern Kentucky on something similar, but of much smaller scale. So I think being able to share your all story will also help in that endeavor as well. And I'd love to connect you all after the webinar today. So much more of sort of a comment question, but I'll follow up with you all to see if you can share your master plan with Brian.
The master plan's on our website,
Perfect.
bgky.org. Go down under featured links, should say Riverfront Master Plan. It's the community's park, so we wanted to share everything with the community and make it available for anybody that wanted to look at it. So yeah, if you can't get it there, email Shane, email Nick Rob. We'll be sure to get you a link to it, but it's out there on the website.
Perfect. Appreciate that. And then Paul Dingle is also working on similar project, but he knows that the project is still in the works. But if you were able to apply the 80-20 rule to this, what would you suspect will be the 20% of the park opportunities that will yield 80% of the fun and utility? Basically, if you could only choose 6 amenities out of the 30 or so, what would they be?
Ooh. Wow, that's a tough one. I'd say the whitewater. If I'm getting to pick, I'm going to say whitewater just because the economic tourism drive that creates. I'm going to say the play.
Yeah, I think, in addition to creating a destination playground, we're gonna have a 20 to 30 foot observation mound, which will give you views of the river and downtown. Those two features will adjoin one another.
Yeah. The canopy walk, I think we don't have it funded, but at some point we will. We'll figure out somebody that's gonna pay for it. That one I think is just gonna be so unique and so different. The other side, I would say the boat ramp because of the public safety aspect. I mean, right now our fire department's trying to carry inflatable boats down a makeshift boat ramp. That's unacceptable. We need to do better.
Another thing too, while the Brownfield was a catalyst for this project has now become a catalyst for development right across the street from the river, which there's going to be some announcements forthcoming here in the near future
Mhm.
that will substantially change our lower downtown area.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the other one I'd say is climbing, because we don't have a lot of recreational climbing in the community to kind of create that opportunity. So if I was going to pick just the top six, I'll tell you, nobody gets excited over parking. So
Thank
but you
you,
got to have it. So
Brent. Thank you. I don't make me get on my soapbox about parking. We have to have it, but no one is coming to your site because you have great parking.
nope, not even close. I got to have the stuff that. So my six would be the things that really draw people there or serve multiple purposes. So like the boat ramp serves a public safety purpose, but also it creates that it will be down from the whitewater. So it creates that passive kayaking downriver. So now we can have active kayaking in the whitewater part, but we can also have be a place for passive kayaking, your floats, to put in through there. And so anything that serves multiple things, but things that draw people there. It's all about getting people there. And parking doesn't do that. So
Well, I just want to acknowledge that we are 1 minute past one. We may have some folks that need to leave, and I totally understand that. But we are recording this, so we'll make sure to get the recording out. Brent and Nick, if you all have time,
Yeah.
we do have one more question that I think is really a great question, and but I do understand if folks need to jump off, know that you will get the recording. And this question actually was sent to me by my colleague Tyler McDaniel with Blueprint Kentucky. And Tyler, I'm just going to ask you to unmute yourself, and we'll ask this final question, and then we'll wrap up for today.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for this presentation. It was wonderful and so exciting to see what's happening in Bowling Green, particularly around the river. And you talked about this a little bit at the end, but I really would love to hear you speak to it more in depth about how after that initial rejection, and then with the 2017 acceptance and sort of changing a lot along the way, just kind of like what your process was for how you brought in new ideas and how you didn't get defeated or bogged down in those moments, and seeing those roadblocks as opportunities instead of like, just a reason to step away. Because I feel like those roadblocks can be really defeating for a lot of communities.
So one thing I'll say is with the ORLP grant, they required public-private participation as part of the grant project budget. We were not able to do that. Now, what we were able to do was get letters from area investors who were stating that as a result of the park project, they were slated to invest X amount of dollars and create X amount of jobs. But we were not able to actually meet that requirement of the grant. So Brent had the great idea of, okay, if we cannot do that, what's another way we could leverage? So that was where we asked the City of Bowling Green Board of Commissioners to match $2 for every grant dollar. So in that second grant application, we made the total project cost 2.25 million instead of 1.5, which was the minimum requirement, where it was a 50-50 match. And we were able to, I think, overcome that initial obstacle that really probably led to us not getting funded the first time.
yeah, but so there's different tactics. One tactic is if you get denied, see if they will do a overview, get your scores. Where did they score you low on? So you see where were you deficient. And so anytime I mean, we ask for it, whether or not they offer it or not is up to them, but we'll ask for it so we can go, okay, where were we missing? how close were we? We were on all these, we felt like we were 2 points away, 3 points away, 4 points away. Like we were within striking distance. If we had been 50 points away, maybe we would have had a little bit different return on it. But a lot of them, they'll sit down, they'll give you 45 minutes, 30 minutes. You can ask questions, they'll go through the scoring. Well, the review committee felt this, you were weak on here, you didn't have this metric, you didn't have this. And then what they're telling you is go solve these problems, figure out solutions to these, and come back next year. And that's what we're willing to do, is come back next year. We might not do it right the first time, but then tell us where we were off, and then we got to figure out, okay, what are those things that we can do to move this forward? And this was really something we felt like we needed to do. I think the other part of this is there was timing. The timing of where Nick and I were, we've been in this game the same amount of time. We worked together at the ad previously. I've been in the city 15 years. He's been in the city 10 years. So you go back 10 years. Nick was just starting here, but he had years of grant experience before that. We knew we had 10 years, 12 years to work on a big project, to really invest that time on the front end, to really create that type of long-term investment. If we were coming in and we knew, hey, in 3 years we're going to retire, we're probably not going to move to that type of project. We knew we had 10, 15, 20 years before we retired at that point. So now we could, hey, what is that big project we can spend some time on? Because we're still doing housing, we're still doing 25 other projects over here. But how do we bring all this together?
One of the other things I would add is the importance of public participation. So with
Absolutely.
those initial grant applications for the ORLP program, one of the areas that we scored low in is we didn't have a lot of citizen engagement. Citizen-led projects are always going to be more competitive. So the great example here is we had this new master plan recently created with MKSK right about the time we applied for our second awarded ORLP grant for the Whitewater Park, where we had thousands of responses and citizen input, which I think really made us that much more competitive. So anytime that you can do any type of citizen engagement, I think you are setting yourself up for success down the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you have to think about it from the grant funder side. They want to make investments that they think are going to have the best impact, because they're comparing us to Denver, Colorado, to Austin, Texas on an ORLP grant, let's say, and to Atlanta, Georgia. On a state grant, they're comparing us to Frankfurt, Lexington, Louisville, Corbin, right? And so they're going to have to determine who has it all together in as close as possible, where there is going to be a real return out of this investment. And so making sure that the community is part of that has really come forward. That's where leveraging those plans, even if that plan sits there, you can go pull nuggets out of it, pull a few data to make that as part of your application, gives you a lot more strength moving forward.
Thank you both. That was a great response, and I think it touched on a lot of the things that we share values around, and in particular, knowing the value of community involvement and ownership of these ideas. Again, just thank you all for sharing this story with us as a part of this webinar series. For folks in attendance, again, I just want to thank you all as well for taking an hour and 15 minutes out of your day to join us to hear this story. And I hope you're able to take something with you, learn a lesson, or apply something in your own work in your own homes. I want to thank my colleagues who have joined us today. And Tyler, thank you for that question. That was a great way to kind of wrap this up. I also want to just share that as soon as we get this uploaded, I will be sending out the link to everyone. I'll do the due diligence, and I will go on your all's website, Nick and Brent, and I'll also share the link to the master plan for folks, so they won't have to go dig it off the website. I'll get that shared with everybody in my follow-up. If you all have any questions in the future, please feel free to reach out to Brent or Nick or myself, Shane Barton, shane.barton@uky.edu. And we look forward to hosting you all in May for our next Brownfield webinar series. With that said, again, thank you all for your time today, and we'll see you soon. All right. You all have a great day.
Thank you.